Welcome to the eNETEmployer how-to video series. This lesson will discuss how to unclose or reopen the most recently closed payroll. This can be useful if you have closed the pay run, then subsequently discovered that further changes or errors need to be adjusted, especially in cases where another type of pay run is not necessary. This can negate the need for you having to create an additional pay, an extra pay, or a reversal pay to correct the error. Unclosing a pay run reverts to the payroll's pre-closed state, which means that any work hours that you have entered for your employees will be restored for further editing if needed. Unclosing the pay will also restore the pay run's original sequence number so that your run numbers remain unaffected. The unclose procedure should only be carried out on a recent payroll and where there has been no data entry for the subsequent pay run. While unclosing a payroll will give you access to the payroll once again, along with any work hours you have entered, the procedure will not reverse other changes that you have made after the close procedure, such as changes to earnings, deductions, employee information, and so on. Depending upon your situation, rather than unclosing a payroll, you may wish to simply restore the most recent backup. A full restore will provide you with a fresh start and will completely reverse any changes made after the payroll was closed. For information on restoring a backup, please view our how-to video entitled Restoring a Payroll Using a Backup. Here is one more quick note about unclosing a payroll when using the electronic funds transfer or EFT procedure. If you have finalized and closed your payroll and then subsequently performed the EFT procedure, you should not use the unclose feature to correct your payroll error. Once funds have been sent out to your bank or financial institution for the EFT process, it is suggested that you create another pay type and pay run to correct the errors instead. For example, if an employee mistakenly did not receive a bonus to which they were entitled and their bank already received and processed the EFT, rather than unclose the pay to add the forgotten amount, the suggested action would be to create an additional pay run to make up the employee's shortfall. Alternately, you could arrange with the employee to have the funds included on their next pay cycle in order to negate the need for an additional pay. Conversely, if an employee was paid too much and the funds were already sent via EFT, you would have several choices. Number one, if the employee had not yet withdrawn the funds, you could contact the bank and recall the funds, but that's a great deal of added work. Or two, if the employee had already withdrawn the funds, you could create a reversal pay to cancel the original amount, along with an additional pay to correct the amount. The additional pay run would allow you to calculate and account for the original CRA remittance overage. So with these items in mind, let's proceed with the lesson and show you how to unclose a payroll. We'll begin by logging into the program and choosing the payroll service. Once the program appears, ensure that you're on the Payroll tab, and then navigate to the Calculation screen by choosing the Payroll Processing Calculations command. As you can see, we are currently at pay period 26 for the year, as shown in the pay period cell. And our status is set to new because this payroll has not yet been calculated. For our unclosed lesson, we will make a data entry omission in our employee work hours, and then we'll finalize and close the payroll. We will then use the unclose feature to reopen the payroll and make the necessary correction. To edit our employee hours, we'll open the Speedy Update screen by choosing the Payroll Processing Speedy Update command. To quickly group our employees by hourly versus salary, we can click on the Regular Hours column to perform a sort function. The 3 hourly employees are now grouped together. We know that they're paid hourly because there are 0 hours entered for each employee, as opposed to the 2 salary employees whose total hours carry over each pay period and do not need to be entered each time. Now if we hold down the Control key on our keyboard as we click on each of the 3 rows, each subsequent row will become highlighted. Once all of the rows are selected, we can enter Edit mode by choosing either the Toggle Edit button from the button bar or by right-clicking on the table and choosing the Edit Toggle Edit command. With the cells now ready for editing, move to the regular hours cell for the first 2 employees and enter 80 in each. But leave the 3rd employee, Isabel, with 0 hours. And when you're finished, you can choose the save icon for each of the 2 edited rows, or to save all of the changes in one step, you can right-click on the table and choose the Edit Accept All command. So now that we've entered our employee work hours, let's calculate the payroll. Choose the Payroll Processing Calculations command, and the Calculations page will appear. As always, before calculating any pay run, take a moment to review the payroll start date, end date, and pay date. The latter is often referred to as the check date. When you have verified the dates, choose the Calculate button. And once the calculations are complete, a message will appear at the top of the table stating the pay has been calculated successfully. Please check the report and save a backup before closing the pay. Notice that the status column now indicates that the payroll has been calculated. If we refer back to the message at the top of the table, it suggests that we check the report to verify our payroll numbers. In this case, it's referring to the Interim Payroll Register report. And if we look to the right, we will see a Generate Report button on the Current Pay Periods row. And when we choose the button, the Interim Payroll Register report is generated, and we can now review our payroll. Depending on your browser settings, the report will either be stored in your Downloads folder, or you may be presented with a dialog box that will prompt you where to save the file. For our demo, we're using the Google Chrome browser, so I can simply click on the PDF button that has appeared at the bottom of my window. Let's zoom in slightly on the Interim Payroll Register report and notice how the word interim appears as a watermark in the background. This watermark will be removed once the payroll is closed. And as we scroll through the pay register, we can see that most of the employees have been paid accordingly, both hourly and salary types. However, employee number 5, Isabel, shows 0 hours along with $0 in the current pay. This has occurred because we purposely omitted her work hours in the Speedy Update screen. Scrolling further through the report, we reach the end of the employee list and see the overall payroll totals. Active employees show 5, and paid employees show 4. For the purposes of our Unclose lesson, we will bypass this obvious error and continue on until our payroll is correct. So let's close the report and return to our payroll. With our payroll numbers now verified via the report, it's time to create a payroll backup. This is a requirement before closing any payroll in eNETEmployer. In fact, if we attempt to choose the close button before a backup has been created, the program will display an error message warning us to do so before proceeding. To initiate the backup process, simply choose the backup button from the button bar. Again, depending on your browser settings, the resulting backup file will either be stored in your Downloads folder, or you may be presented with a dialog box that will prompt you where to save the file. As mentioned earlier, we are using the Google Chrome browser, so I can simply choose the Show in Folder command, and I can see that my backup file has been stored safely in my Downloads folder for later use if needed. With the backup now complete, it's time to close the payroll. We can do so by choosing the Close button from the button bar. Upon choosing Close, the program displays one final message reminding you that closing the payroll will finalize the pay calculation, and that you will no longer be able to make changes to this pay run. If this is acceptable, choose the Yes button to complete the close procedure. Once complete, the program again displays a note stating that the close function was successful and that we can now insert a new pay sequence when we are ready to begin our next payroll. For the purposes of our lesson, we will now assume that the data entry omission has been pointed out to us, and we now have to choose the method by which we will correct the error. As mentioned at the start of the lesson, If we have made any changes to our payroll, an unclose procedure would not be recommended here, and we would instead be asked to restore a backup. But since our payroll has simply been closed with no further changes afterward, we can easily use the Unclose feature. To gain access to the Unclose button, we must use the Customize View feature to reveal this hidden item. Move to the button bar above the table and choose the Customize View button. And when the pop-up window appears, you will see a list of columns on the right that correspond to the visible columns on the current page, starting from Status and Period, and ending off with Generate Report and Clear Year-to-Date Balance. The left side of the window is entitled Available Columns, and this area shows all of the columns that we can add to the visible side as needed. We can move these columns over one at a time by selecting the item and dragging and dropping it. Or we can click on an item and use the orange right-facing arrow. We can even double-click on an item and it will automatically move to the opposing column. To move multiple columns in one step, simply hold down the Control key on your keyboard and click on each subsequent item, and then use the arrow keys accordingly. For our demo lesson, let's move the Unclose column over to the visible column side. We will do so by dragging it over with the mouse. Take special note of where we've moved the Unclose option, right after the Generate Report column. And now when we save our view and the web page updates, the Unclose column now appears right after Generate Report. This revised selection of columns is now considered a custom view, and if you look at the Select View button, you'll notice that the label is changed from default to read View 1. And if we select the button, we can see the original default view is still available for us to choose if we wish to go back to the original view where the Unclose button was not visible. To view a more detailed video lesson on the Customize View feature, please visit our YouTube channel and choose the Working with Customized Views video tutorial. Now that the Unclose button is visible, let's select the button to initiate the procedure. Choose OK to the pop-up message that asks you to confirm the action, and the program will display a status bar while it uncloses the payroll. And once the Unclose process is complete, a message appears above the table indicating that the pay was unclosed. We can now proceed to the Speedy Update screen and edit the row of hours for our missed employee. That's 80 additional hours for Isabel. Now we can save the row, return to the calculations page, and calculate the payroll and make any other additional changes as needed. And that completes the lesson on how to unclose a payroll. As mentioned earlier, this procedure can be useful in cases where you have closed the payroll and then realize the need for a change soon thereafter, and where no further payroll changes have been made. If you have made changes to your payroll and then have the need to correct an earlier error, it's suggested that you use the Restore option instead. For a detailed lesson on performing a payroll restore procedure, please refer to our how-to video entitled Restoring Your Payroll from a Backup. We hope you found the lesson useful, and as always, if you need a detailed explanation for any program item or function, press F1 to access the online help system at any time. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more how-to videos.